Hi! We've heard from a lot of people now who are talking about the fact that they are writing music, and one of the things that's holding up their progress is a kind of lack of colour in the use of chords, not being sure which chords to use, how to be a little bit more dramatic with the chords or whatever, a bit more colourful with the chords. Other people getting in touch saying, I'm quite good at analysing music, but the thing that I'm less good at is analysing chords, analysing the harmony. So hopefully we can address both those agendas in what we're going to do for the next few minutes. Because what better way to do this than to model ourselves on one of the great masters? And as I'm sure a lot of people following the channel have gathered, I'm a great fan of the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And of the many pieces that Bach wrote, we could choose almost any of them to do this exercise. But there's a set of 6 partitas that Bach wrote for the harpsichord. And one of these is in the key of C minor. It's Partita number 2. It's BWV 826 in the cataloguing system. So if you wanted to get hold of a score, it would make a bit of sense with what we're doing. If you haven't got a score, you don't want to obtain one, that's absolutely fine, no problem at all. But I'm going to play the opening 7 bars. The first movement is in 3 sections. There's an opening grave section, then there's a lovely andante in 2 parts, then it goes into an allegro, which is a little bit fugal in design, much more contrapuntal. So 3 quite contrasting sections within the first movement. And the first section feels like the opening section of a French overture, or a slow section with lots of kind of dotted rhythms in it. And what I've tried to distill on the board is what the basic chord progression is. Because this is not just using some kind of 3-chord trick or something. It's doing something that's a little bit more embellished. So let's just have a look at what Bach's underlying chord scheme is. Well, he's in the key of C minor, so it's no big surprise that the first chord is C minor. The second chord he uses is interesting. It's a diminished 7th in the key of C, so you always build this on the 7th degree of the scale, and it's the diminished triad, and then you add another minor 3rd on the top. So the diminished 7th is always a bit of a colourful chord, and what Bach does is he puts it over C. So you get that extra dissonance. The C is not part of the diminished 7th, but he's using C as a kind of pedal point. You notice these chords are built on C, 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 C before he goes on. These are bars, by the way, bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, bar 5, bar 6, bar 7. So you can see we have a C pedal point when you've got C being reiterated, sometimes with chords that it belongs to, sometimes with chords that it doesn't. So he starts with C minor, and then puts a diminished 7th over the C. He uses that again and comes back to C minor. That's quite effective in itself, isn't it? This is a kind of chord of resolution. It's the tonic chord in C minor. It's used here and it's used there. This is an intense chord because diminished 7th is a chromatic chord. It's more intense. Over a tonic pedal, it's even more intense. So we kind of go from repose to tension. Repeat the tension, back to repose. You can see the effect this has on the music, which does affect the way we play it because we want to feel the greater intensity of the diminished 7th over the C pedal. Then where would you go next? Well, if you were writing a piece in C minor, you might be looking for like chord 4 or chord 5 next, maybe, you know, keep it simple. Actually, what does Bach do? He uses a C7, so a C major, but with a 7th, a flat 7 on it. So really we've got what you might determine to be a dominant 7th in the key of F. It turns out to be a dominant 7th in the key of F minor because that's where it's going. And what he does, having had that C7, he then adds a flat 9 to it later in the bar. So the 7th is colourful, the 9th makes it even more intense. So again, he's ramping up the intensity. And for the people who think that flat 9 chords were invented by jazz musicians, well, either that's wrong or Bach was a jazz musician when he wrote this, because there it is, the flat 9 chord. And it resolves onto an F minor chord there. So we get to F minor. And I should say, actually, that F minor is still over C. So we're getting this idea of the C tonic pedal kind of doing quite a lot there. And in fact, so is this one. So this C tonic pedal is continuing quite a long way. So you get the F minor over C, and then you get this D diminished chord, but over C. So you can see that's very intense as well. And then he goes to a G minor chord over the B flat. So that's an interesting resolution of this. Not quite where we're expecting it to go, actually. And then C minor's back with us, but it's a kind of C minor 7 because he's got the B flat in it, but he's put the B flat in the bass. So you can feel that 7th in the bass, and the bass note B flat falls to A flat with an F minor chord there. Then at the end of the bar, he comes to a G7. Beginning of the next bar, he's back with his flat 9s again, look. Enriching that G7 to make it a G flat 9. And then he comes back to C minor again. And again, I should say, technically, that's a C minor over G. And then he decides that he's going to finish on a chord of G major. And the approach to that is to take a diminished 7th over a tonic pedal. So that's a very intense chord again, isn't it? And then resolves it onto the G major. Why is he finished on a chord of G major? Well, it's chord 5, the dominant chord is C minor, and it's going to lead us on to the next section. So he finishes on that chord, and then he goes on in the key of C minor with a chord of C minor into the next section, which is also rather beautiful. So what I'm trying to give you here is the kind of chord outline, and to show you where the moments of kind of repose are, where the moments of tension are, so you can see what the essential harmonic skeleton is, and you can see actually how evolved that is. We're not just using a 3-chord trick, are we? We're doing something that's rather more complicated than that, but how it really adds colour and intensity to the music. Now, of course, he's not just written block chords, he's kind of elaborated all sorts of melodic ideas around that, and then he's injected these dotted rhythms to give it this French overture character. But that is the chord scheme. So I'm going to play you this opening 7-bar section so you can see how it fits in with that chord scheme. Okay, so here's bar 1. Bar 2. Bar 3. Five, 6, 7. Okay, I've played that a bit faster than it ought to go really, but just to demonstrate what we're saying, that we've got this as a chord scheme, and then you hear how he built in all this melodic decoration over that. So we kind of engineer this scheme into something that makes kind of musical sense. So I hope that's a useful exercise in just extending harmonic vocabulary, or just in seeing how we might analyse the chords of a fairly kind of short focused section of the piece. And you might want to go away and live with those few bars, or play them if you're a keyboard player, or listen to it being played while you're following the chord scheme. Or if you're a keyboard player or a guitarist, sit down and just play with these chords and see what you can do with them and how it might help extend your own harmonic vocabulary.